statement which you consider sexist, honestly, I'm still at loss to understand what is the great objection to it. Had this lady not been involved in the scam, then it would have been unfair to comment on her. She was at the center of the controversy. Entire media chased her. I have a lot of statements I'm reading where she actually shouted at the media for actually following her.
Right. And I think we need to bear upon this, because this is a point that he keeps bringing up. The fact, the use of the word girlfriend. Do you think in the tone in which it was said, in the context in which it was said, was it then, invested with a degree of...
I think the pejorative part of it was putting a price tag to the girlfriendship.
No, okay, now the whole sentence, 50 crore girlfriend.
Yeah.
You don't put a value.
What he meant was that 50 crores was the benefit that she derived because of the association with him. I think you should not. He's such a senior politician. Please don't expect him to make such comments. Cheap comments. He's a very responsible politician.
That may be what he meant, but that's not what he said.
Why not issue a clarification then?
No, why there is absolutely nothing in the statement. You are actually selectively interpreting that statement. For one, I think there is absolutely, it's blown out of proportion.
Ankita, what I would do, if I were his advisor, thank God I'm not, if I were him, I would apologize to Mr Tharoor, saying that while I firmly believe that the issue should have been flagged, perhaps you have been hurt by the sentiment of what I said, and I'm sorry. It's gentlemanly, it's large, it's sagacious. No one in this world has been hurt by saying sorry. No one.
I honestly, I don't think there is any reason in this.
That's fair.
I think neither any. It's purely a selective kind of interpretation of the comment. He didn't mean it. I can say it because the manner in which he spoke also. He is only hinting at the corruption part of it. How a friend who is a girlfriend. I don't think Shashi Tharoor has any problem in calling her a girlfriend.
Very difficult to apologize.
Too bright.
Yes, for some of grievous wrongs that have happened. I'm saying Narendra Modi is not exactly, the kind of person you'd expect to apologize.
And if
indeed he owes an apology here, he owes a much bigger apology for far more grievous wrongs that have happened on his watch. For him to expect to apologize to Sunanda would be really asking for too much, considering the fact that he's Narendra Modi. But the political discourse has really hit an all-time low. And I think if indeed he wanted to make a point about sweat equity, 5%, serious charges, tainted minister coming back,
other ways of doing
it. He should have done it differently.
All right.
I think we'll
have to
women and wives and female proteges are used in politics.
And anything goes in an election rally.
Anything goes.
I just want to ask you, are you
not
married?
Anything goes, but you have to speak in the language of the people. No offense is meant in this.
Mr. Rao,
and again, you believe that this is the language of the people of India, because I think we've already heard a counter argument to that.
Are you married?
Absolutely.
Okay, do me a favor. Go home and be honest. Go home, ask your wife if you had made that statement, if she'd still give you supper. If she says yes, she is more magnanimous than most women would be.
But Shashi Tharoor has actually tried to gain some popularity out of his tweet. This tweet has gone off well for Shashi Tharoor, but he must watch out for his future tweets, because last tweet cost him an election.
And speaking of tweets, I think we'll leave the last word to a person who's commented on Twitter on this entire matter. He said Shashi Tharoor is back with a bang, not just in the cabinet but also on Twitter, and that seems to be one of the messages going out tonight. That's not to take away from that sexism debate in any way whatsoever. A lot of outrage generated by those comments. We'll take a very quick break at this point. Still ahead, a look at Superstorm Sandy, just how much devastation it's wreaked in New York and the east coast of the US. We're also talking about disaster preparedness here. Welcome back to Left, Right and Centre. Superstorm Sandy is one of the strongest storms ever to batter the United States. It's already claimed at least 16 lives. It's knocked out power to an estimated 7 million people on the US east coast. Well, here in India, Cyclone Neelam is posing a bit of a worry. It's advancing towards Tamil Nadu, expected to make landfall tomorrow.
it's extremely hard to stand out on the street, not really because of the rain, but because the wind hits you, it cuts you. It's really sharp and biting when it hits you, because the winds here are still blowing at 85 miles per hour, and that, actually think about it, is like a car going at 135 kilometers straight on.
To my left, you see the choppy sea. That's the indication of the deep depression. Authorities have declared a holiday for schools in Chennai.
All right, Chennai braces for Cyclone Neelam as New York and indeed all of the east coast of the United States already faces a great deal of damage. Joining us to discuss tonight is how prepared are we for natural disasters like this, for storms like this. We have Dr. Arunabha Ghosh, CEO, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Joining us also NDTV's science editor Pallav Bagla. We have M. Shashidhar Reddy, Vice Chairman of India's National Disaster Management Authority as well. Arunabha, you've been a New Yorker as well, and in a sense you're here as much as a former New Yorker as you are as an expert on the subject. When you see the kind of response we've seen today, Barack Obama signing emergency decrees, in a sense declaring an emergency in both New York and New Jersey, the kind of response we've seen today to the cyclone, do you see a similar sort of response here? How do you believe we compare? Are we prepared?
Ankita, I think we need to understand the nature of the risks in both the countries. I was living in New York when the 2003 summer blackout hit. That affected about 50 million people in the East Coast. Then I was in the United States when Hurricane Katrina hit. Subsequently, there have been an increasing intensity of hurricanes in the United States. Of the 10 most damaging, in economic terms, damaging hurricanes in the United States, 8 have occurred in the last decade. The problem, I think, here is different. It's the number of people who are potentially vulnerable. When we talk about natural disasters, it's not just the event, it's also the exposure, and New York is as exposed to natural disasters as our coastal cities. But then there's the vulnerability, and 20% of India's population lives in coastal areas. We need to think about a different scale of intervention when we're talking about disaster preparedness.
A different scale of intervention, Pallav, is that something you would agree with, just in terms of population, of demographics, of people living in coastal areas?
Certainly, you need a different scale of intervention. We need a much larger scale of intervention to move people out of vulnerable areas. But remember, the US did not do well during Katrina. We should never forget that. And India did extremely well when the tsunami came. India and the US, when you compare on disasters, the number of lives lost will always be higher in India. People don't want to leave their homes. Number of lives lost in the Western setting will be lower. But the extent of damage and the monetary value will always be higher there as compared to India. And don't underestimate India. We have some of the finest capabilities today in satellites to monitor cyclones. We have a day and night viewing satellite which can monitor Hurricane Neelam, the way it will fall on land. The same capability exists in the US. They deployed it. We are also deploying the same capabilities. So times have changed. Responses, you need a huge effort in India.
Times have changed, responses have changed.
I think times are changing. I mean, if you consider not just the number of people, but even in economic impact terms, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in a recent report.
All right, I believe the New York mayor is actually making a statement as we speak. Let's just quickly dip in to see what's going on.
Including many of our hospitals. And because they shut it down preemptively, we're hopeful that the steam system can be restored fairly soon. I spoke to Con Ed CEO Kevin Burke to offer any assistance that we can provide. We will talk to him again later on. But I think it is fair to say that you should expect, given the extent of the damage, power may be out in lots of places for 2 or 3 days and maybe even a little bit longer than that. There is extensive flooding in all under-river subway tunnels. Subway yards where rail trains are typically stored also flooded, and I think that shows the wisdom of Joe Lhota in moving trains out of there to higher ground. I don't think there was any damage done to the rolling stock, but the tunnels all flooded, and that's going to be a big problem to get them back going. Public transportation remains closed until further notice is a good way to think about it. There is no firm timeline for the reactivation of bus or train service, but I'm sure the MTA will do everything it can to have limited bus service, perhaps this afternoon, and hopefully we'll be able to announce, or Joe Lhota will be able to announce, restoration of most bus service by tomorrow. We certainly think the roads by tomorrow will be clear and free of water. All major airports serving the metro area are closed today. Runways are flooded, and there are